remarkable series of knowledgeable lectures featuring our honorable guests who will undoubtedly enrich your wisdom. This unique platform offers you a chance to gain expert insights and be exposed to a plethora of new ideas.
We would now like to welcome our source of unwearying determination and perseverance, our backbone, the principal of HR College, Dr. Pooja Ramchandani.
Good morning once again to all my dear brand ambassadors, as I keep calling you, because when I call you brand ambassadors, you feel a part of family. You have a sense of responsibility that you have now taken a bigger brand called HR College. You have fought for it because of your percentages. You have taken it on merit because of your great grades and achievements. And today, we are with our another lecture series, which is on banking and financial services careers. One of an important sector that Indian economy talks about. Without money, we can't live. Without financial services today, we cannot move around. I mean, look at our entire life today. It revolves around so many financial services that we use. We don't even realize how they have become a part of our life. And it has opened so many opportunities for younger students. I remember my days when teaching was only profession, doctor was only profession, engineer was only profession. But today, an options like investment bankers, an option like portfolio manager, wealth managers, angel investors. I mean, talk about it and you can list out hundreds of opportunities that have opened up in banking and financial services sector. And with AI and data analytics or business analytics, there are many more options opening up. There are many more degrees coming up. I know now a lot of students not just run behind CA, which is a factory of HR. I can proudly say that approximate more than 1,000 students takes chartered accountancy as a career. But also a CFA has become a choice or liking of many students now because they want to settle abroad, or an ACCA degree, or a natural science, or. I mean, today the options are multiple. And I'm sure when Tusharji, who's from the financial services background and has served so many big industries or have headed so many big industries, he has more to offer you and tell you rather than me, who's just the principal of the college and running so many courses. So taking it from the person who has been there, achieved it, and now telling you what will you do to break the scenario and get the best for you. So welcoming Tusharji once again online, and as he promised that he will come offline again and meet us. And I must thank Dr. Tasneem, who have been a key to get him to online mode. And how will I forget my student council brand ambassadors, who have been controlling every technical aspect of Zoom, as well as in the process learning. I can see Ansha and Neha regularly there and taking charge of these sessions. So as we say in HR, the college is of the students, by the students, for the students. Ansha and Neha have been an example that how others who are joining in this year will get control when you get into HR college. So kids, don't just be volunteers, which we always say, be the leaders. And that's what we want to create. So thank you to my council brand ambassadors who have been taking charge of these sessions and making my first years feel so special that first day they are meeting the industry experts. So over to Ansha and Neha for taking this further proceedings and welcoming from the bottom of heart this Wednesday morning with a smile to my all first years who have joined HR College for the first year program. So over to Ansha and Neha.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Being an HRite, I truly agree with whatever you said. So along with Pooja, ma'am, I would now like to formally welcome our degree college vice principals, Dr. Naveen Punjabi, Dr. Rani Tyagi, and Dr. Jasbir Sodhi. Along with them, I would now like to welcome all the faculty members present out right here. We are so thrilled to have you here today. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Tasneem Razmi, who's the Assistant Professor at HR College. She is a Faculty Coordinator for the Investment Club of HR College, Finacle Magazine, Research Cell, and the PVOC Wealth Management Committee. I now call upon ma'am to please welcome our guest speaker for the day, Mr. Tushar Desai.
Thank you, Ansha. Good morning, everybody. Principal, Tushar sir, and all you students. We are looking forward to seeing you for the next couple of years with us. And as ma'am said, this platform is yours. Please make the best out of it. And we want to see you in more leadership roles. And I can assure you that under principal's leadership, it's yours. Whatever you want, she's going to make a way for it. So just ask and you shall get. That's the motto, I would say, at HR College. Now, another important role I have today, I have the privilege of introducing Mr. Tushar Desai. He was born and brought up in Mumbai and completed his Bachelor's of Commerce from Mumbai University. And then he went on to acquire a professional degree in cost accountancy. And he's also a certified associate of the Indian Institute of Bankers. He has a rich banking career, which includes varied international banking experiences. And he has worked with 3 leading international banks, namely HSBC, JP Morgan, and Goldman Sachs. And here he has led multiple global businesses and different operation teams. His expertise is in general with the financial markets area and specifically with equities. He's also very passionate about tennis and cricket. And nowadays, he's involved with India Accelerator. Some of you may have heard of it, which is a startup accelerator firm which helps young entrepreneurs through their initial business setups and journeys. Besides that, on the philanthropy side, he's also always willing to help with his time and expertise in the education sphere and also for the skill development of India's youth. The list is endless. There's lots more I can say about it, but I would not want to wait further time. And sir, with this, I would like to invite you to come and address our young, eager minds. Sir, platform is yours.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm just getting in between and feeling humbled and impressed by your CV, sir. I want to ask you, how do you get time to play badminton and your favorite hobbies? Because I have not been able to get any time. And what Tasneem said, that you're associated with Indian Institute of Bankers, as well as Accelerator Lab, which is going for startups. Can I request you on this platform? I know this is not the right platform, but can we associate with HR College? Because there are young budding entrepreneurs in HR College, where we want them to face these investors who are angel investors, and maybe you get some angels for our students, because I can see the spark in them, but they need a platform. So can we meet offline as soon as possible? Which you said someday. I wanted maybe next week, if possible. And we can get this started where our students can come up with an idea, and it is up to the investors to give them platforms. So I would love to have this done on a very, very faster basis. So the first year should know that now they can become entrepreneurs right in their first years of age if they got a great idea and some great plans. So, sir, I would not come in between you and my dear students. This was only something that excited me. I said I will not stop. I'll at least share it with you.
Absolutely. Your wish is my command. All right. Okay. So, firstly, thank you, Dr. Pooja Ramchandani, for the kind words. It feels a great sense of gratitude to be here today. I want to probably start with not just thanking the principal for leading such a great organization and institution, but equally the vice principal, the faculty, and all of you students for making HR College what it is, right? It's been an institution of repute for a number of years and continues to be the go-to institution for anyone looking to build a academic career, right? So thank you for the privilege. I would probably start with saying that for all of these students, I think it's important to have a sense of gratitude for this opportunity of being able to build a career with an institution, with an academic institution of repute like HR College. And I want you to know this, that there are thousands and thousands of students like you who are out there and probably are envying the fact that you're starting your academic career at HR, right? So please never forget, have that sense of gratitude, have that humbleness, because, it's important wherever you reach in your careers, you remember where you started, right? We all are as good as what our parents help us become, what our friends and family help us become. So it's the entire ecosystem, and I think the college and the professors play a very big role, in building individuals and building good citizens. And again, thank you to everyone in the faculty, the principal, the vice principals, for actually leading such an esteemed organization. One more sort of background, which I wanted to sort of lay stress on before we get into today's topic, is that, whenever any of you are looking for any inspiration or any motivation, right? I don't really think you need one, because, you are students of HR College, but, there comes a time when we all need a little bit of that extra push, right? That extra bit of motivation, that extra bit of inspiration. I want you all to remember that you all are going to lead and be a part of 3 massive transformations that are happening across the world today, right? It is almost rare, and I would say this is the first time in human history that 3 massive transformations are happening almost at the same time and are going to pan out over the next decade, a couple of decades, and you are going to be the front and center of it all. What are those 3 transformations? First is the energy transformation, right? We all talk about climate change. We all talk about fossil fuels and the harm it's causing the environment. There is a massive drive towards renewable energy. We've all read about it. So clearly, I think there's a huge push towards renewable energy and this whole energy transformation, including electric cars, which you see a lot today. So that's the first transformation. The second transformation is technology. And technology, again, has been around for probably now 3 to 4 decades. But the step change that is going to happen now with quantum computing, with artificial intelligence, I almost look at it as, earlier the computers would do what you would ask the computer to do. Now the computer will start thinking and telling you what you should be doing, right? So think of that change. It's a massive change, right? Earlier, you had to command a computer and the computer would perform a task, right? Now, the computer will command you, right? So it's almost getting to the level where it will have brains, and it will be probably equal to or very close to a human, right? It will obviously not have feelings, but it will be very close to humans. So that's the second technology transformation. And the third, and a very critical one as well, is the whole biotechnology, which is where I think we are pretty close to actually having human tissues, human organs being built outside of a human body, right? And one can imagine the change that that's going to bring to the world, not just to medicine, but just the way we live, and the way we look at everything, including managing some chronic diseases, etc. Right? So coming back, if you're ever going to look at any inspiration or motivation, look at these 3 massive transformations that are happening: energy, technology, and biotech. And remember that you are going to be front and center of it. You're going to be leading it. And clearly, that's going to throw up massive opportunities, right? So clearly in terms of careers, yes, we're going to talk now about how you build a career in financial services and what does it mean. But equally, you need to be aware of what's happening all around you, because financial services will not operate in a vacuum. It's probably one of the only industry that is servicing every aspect of human activity, right? And therefore, whatever is happening in the world is going to impact you, it's going to impact financial services. And that is why I thought it was very appropriate that I start with a little bit of, the big picture, a little bit of that background, so that, I don't want anyone to leave thinking that, if you are part of financial services, you are the world. You are actually not the world is around you, and you are actually supporting the world, right, around you. So, over the next 10 years, as I said, maybe 20 for sure, life would be very different. And all these transformations would bring immense opportunities to all of you. So I would ask you to, be bold, think big, and don't be afraid to fail. So with that, we'll move on to our today's topic of, building a career in financial services. The way I have thought about doing this is, keeping it very simple. So I'll try and avoid jargons. I'll try and avoid big words. And what I've done is I've broken it up into 3 simple parts: the why of financial services, the what of financial services. And when I say what, I mean what are financial services and what do you need to be a part of that? And finally, how do you go about it, right? So hopefully the why, the what, and the how of financial services will help you in the next, I would say, 40-45 minutes to walk away feeling a little more empowered, a little more informed about what you need to do next, right? And look, I would also say that, any career, and more so in financial services, is a journey in itself, right? So it's not like a one-day thing or a one-week thing or a one-year thing. It's a constant progress. It's a constant, small steps you take. And it's pretty complex, right? When you talk of financial services, I think the first thing that comes to most people's mind is they think of a bank, right? And, if you walk into most commercial banks, right, most banks which are down every street in India, you will think it's a fairly simple setup, right? There are probably 5 or 7 people, some accept cash, some accept deposits. There is a counter where you can deposit your checks. There is someone who will help you with, queries, etc. And it all seems very simple, but actually it's not, right? And so let's start off with the why of financial services. Firstly, there are three main reasons why I believe that financial services is the place to be. And it's not because, I've been a part of it. It's firstly because financial services is at the backbone of every human activity, right? And think about it. Anything that one does, any commercial activity that one even starts thinking about, the first thing that comes to mind is, what do I need to do? Where do I open a bank account? How will I get the capital? How will I pay, certain dues, certain registration fees? How do I go about all of those things? And therefore, finance and having capital becomes the first step that every entrepreneur or every individual has to think about, right? So why financial services? Firstly, it's the backbone of all human activity, right? It provides capital, it provides liquidity, and provides a framework for actually a smooth, activities in all industries, right? Second, and this is very critical, and this is probably unique to financial services, is that, financial security of an individual or a family is one of the main drivers or motivation of human beings, right? And I think one needs to remember this, because why it's critical is that, you don't need to create a demand for financial services, right? Financial services has a latent demand on the back of a human motivation to create financial security for oneself and for one's family, right? And think about it, right? The first thing that one thinks of, as you start earning, as you start working, is how do I plan? How do I create a nest for myself? How do I create a buffer for my retirement, right? And so from day one, or even at times before you start earning, financial security of yourself, of your family, is one of the main drivers and motivation, right? And with that, there is almost an unlimited demand, because think of it, right? With more than 7 billion people on the planet, everyone needs many elements of financial services, not just one, right? They just don't need one bank account. They need a multitude of different financial products and services. And therefore, there is almost unlimited demand for financial services. And what happens when there's unlimited demand? It creates great opportunities, right? It helps you build a great career, because there is so much to do. And the third reason why financial services is the place to be is in India's growth, right? We've all been hearing about India now being a 3 trillion economy with we are very close to, my calculation tells me that we are probably 5 years away from being a 5 trillion economy, and probably another 6 or 7 years after that to become a 10 trillion economy, right? So India is going to be 3x of what it is today. And imagine the scope and the breadth and the sophistication of financial services as India grows, as every individual on the street starts making a life for themselves, starts, becoming more and more financially independent. Think of the exponential growth in requirements that will happen, right? And if you are entering this field today or in a few years from now, you will be at the center of all of that, right? And like I said, I think you don't need to create the demand. You just need to be doing the basics right. You just need to be driven and motivated to make a difference. And it's a great career for anyone wanting to step into, right? So I'll pause and I'll summarize what we just spoke about, the why of financial services. It's the backbone of all human commercial activity. Second, it provides financial security to an individual and a family, and therefore there is an unlimited demand for it. And third is the India growth story, where as India progresses, I think the demand for financial services is just going to be exponential, right? So I'm just conscious that we are not in a position to pause and have Q&A as I speak. But I just want you to start making some notes, maybe mental notes if required. And we can come back to anything that we just spoken about. So hopefully the why of financial services is clear. And with that, we should quickly move on to the what of financial services, right? So hopefully this why, what, and how is going to help you to break it down into very, very simple steps. Hopefully this will be something that stays with you for a long, long time, not just for your academic career, but for your professional career as well, right? So now coming to the what of financial services. So like we said, look, there are different versions of what people understand financial services to be. If you ask a layman on the street, I think for them, financial services is very simply put a place where they can park some money, right? And they will probably point you to a bank, right? This is where, they would go and probably deposit some of their extra income, some of their cash, do a little bit of their savings, have a fixed deposit, etc., right? That to most people is what financial institution or financial service is all about. However, I want you to understand again that financial services is so vast, is so complex, is so deep, and is so interconnected that one can spend a lifetime and actually just scratch the surface, right? And therefore, it becomes very difficult to sort of paint a picture of what financial services actually include. But again, to make it simple, like the why, what, and the how, I want you to think of financial services under 4 dimensions, right? Think of it as a room, as a square, and then there are 4 quadrants. Now, what are those 4 dimensions of financial services? The first dimension is the products, right? Now, you can also think of products as asset classes. Some people refer to products as different assets. What are the different assets, right? Very simply put, at a very high level, fixed income, which is your bonds, your government bonds, the corporate bonds, debentures. This is where you get a fixed rate of return. That is fixed income, right? Second asset class is equities. This is the risk capital. And I'm sure all of you are experts in the basics of this, but I just wanted to repeat because it's important to put the context. Third is commodities. And again, commodities is huge, it's vast. There are different types of commodities. There's agri, there is minerals, there is precious metals, there is crude oil. A fun fact, right? Who can tell me what is the most traded commodity in the world? Anyone on the chat?
Gold.
No. Anyone?
Someone says aluminium in the chat box. Crude oil.
Crude oil, absolutely. So crude oil is the most traded commodity in the world, right? And it's probably very counterintuitive, right? You wouldn't think of that. Intuitively you would think it's gold just because of the value, but it's not, right? So that's commodities for you. Then there is currencies, right? Every country has a different currency. These currencies, for the most part, are convertible, as we call them, as in, you can exchange. Most countries have a very free sort of exchange of currencies. These are traded. It's a very active 24/7 by 365 market for currencies, right? The fifth is real estate, right? All of these are part of financial services. They are assets in their own right, but they constitute the basket of what a financial institution covers, right? Real estate is the highest value asset class in the world, right? Now, this is again a little known fact. When you talk of what's the asset class with the highest value, I'm not sure most people will say real estate, right? But when I say real estate, I mean both commercial as well as residential, right? If you look at the value and you sum up the value of all real estate, not just in a country, in a city, in the world, it will be mind-boggling, right? It's one with the highest value and there's nothing which comes second. There's nothing which comes even close to it, right? And then finally, there is the emerging assets, right? And you know, the classic example of an emerging asset is Bitcoins. You know, and for the most part, I think it's still evolving. And that's the beauty of financial services, right? It's quite dynamic. New asset classes, new avenues for investments keep coming all the time. And one needs to be a little more careful, right, when you're dealing with things you don't understand. Okay, so that was the product side, right? We talked about products, we talked about fixed income, equity, commodities, currencies, real estate, and certain emerging assets, right? So that's what I call the products, the 4 dimensions, the first dimension. Now let's come to the second dimension. The second dimension is what I call the institutions, right? The institutions actually bring a lot of these products together. They are the ones that are market makers. When I say market makers, they will buy and sell, right? So they give a two-way quote, right? They will not only buy from you, they will also sell to you, which means there's a two-way quote for you. So banks, insurance companies, you know, are what I call the institutions, the framework, the marketplace in some cases. So clearly that's the second dimension and probably a very critical dimension. The third is what I call the exchanges and the intermediaries, right? Intermediary, many of them create a flow of money or the flow of assets or the transfer of assets. And what are they? The stock exchanges, the brokers, they are custodians, they are mutual funds, right? So they are, in a way, all of these are intermediaries in the financial marketplace, right? So we talked about products, we talked about institutions, we talked about the intermediaries, which actually help service the entire, you know, financial ecosystem. And the fourth dimension, which is where, again, financial services is unique, is that it is very strongly regulated in most cases, right? And therefore, when you talk of regulation, you have to make sure that you're always within the law. And the reason why financial regulation is so critical, because you're dealing with people's money, right? You're dealing with trust, yeah? And if there is no trust in the financial system, the country cannot progress. So there is, you know, when you think of regulators, the first thing that comes to mind for most people is the Reserve Bank of India, right? So every country will have a central bank. You know, in India, it's called the Reserve Bank. There's also the Securities and Exchange Board of India, the SEBI. There is IRDAI for the insurance sector, the insurance regulator. And similarly, you know, there are regulators for there is a real estate regulator, you know, new and emerging asset classes, you know, will very soon obviously have something overseeing that as well, hopefully. So all of this comes under what I call the regulatory aspect, because as we said, it's very critical to have trust in the system, without which, you know, the whole financial system can collapse, right? So those are the 4 dimensions that we spoke about. Again, I will just pause. I will just recap. You know, the 4 dimensions that we spoke about in the what are financial services include products, include institutions, includes the intermediaries and exchanges, and include the regulators, right? So these are the four sort of dimensions. The reason I covered this in some detail is to give you a sense of the career ahead, right? Think of it. Each of these individual assets that we spoke about you can probably spend 4, 3, 5, 7 decades and probably not know enough about each, right? Because they're also constantly evolving, right? You can spend a career in an institution and probably not cover all parts of what the institution does, right? You can spend a career in a exchange or in a custody business, or with a broker or with a mutual fund, and probably not know everything about it, right? Similarly, you can even think of building a career at a regulator, right? Not many people think about it, but Reserve Bank of India or the Securities and Exchange Board of India are actually great places, for a career as well. And most people don't even have that in their sort of list of, things to do. So that's hopefully gives you a sense of the what are financial services. It gives you a bird's eye view, overview of what financial services, the 4 dimensions, how deep they are. Like I said, look, it's probably the only sector which is so interconnected globally. So it is not about a bank in India or an exchange in India or a stock in India or the Indian rupee. Anything and everything that happens around the world has an impact, right? And so that's the beauty, and that's the challenge, and that's what keeps one motivated, through a career in financial services. So that's the what. Now, just a quick sort of summary of what I personally love about financial services and why I have been around. Again, you could say that that's true of most businesses, or it's true of most human activities. I think you're partly true, but financial services, trust, integrity, and ethics are probably at the top. It's something that can never be compromised. You would see most institutions play a huge premium. They're very, very selective, in who they hire. There's a lot of checks on the person. There are a lot of checks on the background, family, etc. It's because you need people who can be trusted, who are, who come with a deep sense of integrity and are ethical, right? So that's what I love about financial services. Also, like I said, it looks simple from the outside, but it's simple, and therefore it may look boring, but it is fairly complex, very challenging, evolving all the time. You need to be reading everything that's happening around you. We spoke about a lot of transformation that's happening in the world. And believe me, the reason I started with talking about the transformation is because I want you to know that all of them are impacting and are going to significantly impact financial services as they come along, right? So that's the what of financial services, right? So hopefully, it gives you a sense now of why financial services, what are financial services, what I personally like about financial services. So hopefully things are much clearer. And I'm sure a lot of you knew this. What I've just covered is very, very basic. I'm conscious of the fact that it's basic, but I'm also aware that most times you need to start with a solid foundation. And because of the vastness of the topic, I think it's important to simplify it into the why, what, and the how, right? Okay, so let's move to the how. So I think this is fairly critical for you as you start in your journey, not just your academic journey, but as you think about getting into a career in this space. Again, look, very simple tips on the how. How do you go about building a career in financial services? I think this is the crux, and this is probably top of mind for all of you. My simple tip to everyone is pick 1 or 2 areas of interest, right? We covered the 4 dimensions, right? And each of these dimensions are daunting, are huge, can take a lifetime, but you need to start somewhere. And I think the first step is to pick an area which is of natural interest to you, right? It could be a product. Some people may be very keen on fixed income. They love bonds, they love trading. Some may be focused and like, gold trading for all they may like precious metals. Some people may say, no, this is not for me. I like real estate, right? Because real estate will always be in demand. Everyone needs a home, etc. So, you could pick real estate, right? So pick 1, pick maybe 2 actually, because it gives you a fallback and it broadens your horizon. So the simple way to start and the how of financial services, how do I enter one? How do I get started? First is pick 1, right? It's multi-dimensions, 4 at least, like we covered. You could pick a regulatory landscape and say, I want to think of joining either RBI or SEBI or IRDAI, right? That could be a great career as well. So pick 1, right? Pick 1. Once you have shortlisted, I think there is no substitute but to read, and read, right? And luckily, I think for all of you, there is so much material out there. You don't need to get into a physical library. I remember, my sort of college days, I was a big fan of studying in the library. I don't know how many of you actually do that now, or how many of you even get to a library. It'll be interesting to talk to the faculty and the vice principals and take a tour of your college and see how many students actually utilize a library and how many people are actually studying in there. But I would spend hours and hours in the library because, I was a big fan of, studying on your own, reading various books, making notes, etc. Right? So that's the simplest way, of starting out. Second is, have a mentor, right? Now, there's a lot about mentorship, and we can actually have a series or talk on mentorship on its own, right? It's a reasonably important topic to cover for students in particular, but this applies to everyone, right? We all need a mentor. I have a mentor, and someone who you look up to, someone who's outside of your family, and who would give you undiluted advice, right? Who would give you advice which you may not like hearing it, but it's for your own good, right? That's a critical aspect of being a good mentor, right? So look around you, ask, your parents if you need help, but look for someone who is in that particular field. So let's say you pick, I'm just making an example here. Let's say you pick real estate, right? And like I said, within real estate, there is commercial and there's residential, right? So let's pick commercial real estate for a moment, right? You need to then think of someone who is actually doing some good work in the commercial real estate sector, right? There are a lot of good asset managers today. There is a real estate investment trust, REIT. You may have heard of REIT. Someone who's involved, someone who's working, someone who spent some years, either building a REIT, who's part of a commercial real estate setup, etc. Get someone who you can talk to occasionally, who you can meet occasionally, get to know what's happening, get to know the nitty-gritties. So every time you read something, you may want to bounce off, ideas, saying, I don't understand this in full. Who do I talk to? And you need someone who you can talk to. So having a mentor outside of family who is in that relevant field makes a huge difference. And along with mentor, networking, right? So networking with like-minded people, networking with people in not just that industry, but people who have achieved something in their career, I think it's critical. And start now, right? The sooner you start, the better it is, because some of these things take time, right? Building a rapport with a mentor can take time, can take a year, can take a couple of years, right? So when you need this person, you should be very comfortable, right? Networking again takes time, right? You're not going to do it every day. You're not going to stop your work and say, oh, now I'm going to network, right? So the beauty of networking is that it's not an activity in itself, right? It's part of everything you do. You just need to look out for a mentor. You just need to look out for a network, right? So it could be a social setting. It could be a wedding. It could be a friend's birthday party, right? Where you meet someone, and you may think, wow, this looks like a good person to have in my network, right? And it's not just like-minded people. Remember, networking is different from having friends, right? Don't confuse a network with friends, because friends is you generally have more like-minded people along each other. Network is having a wider network of people in different sort of professions, having different views about life, and from whom you can learn, right? So network. And then finally, as you come into the final year, and I'm sure there is an internship program that's available for all of you, start working on shortlisting where are the places where you could get a few months of good internship, right? Again, look at the brand, look at the people behind the brand, because it's critical that one looks at institutions where they are known for integrity, they are known for trust. We covered the basic elements of a good financial services institution. So look for those elements and look for internship, which will actually give you a practical view of what you've been studying, right? So that's the how. Now, let me very quickly give you a practical tip of the how, right? How can you start today? If you're keen on a career in financial services, how can you start today? First practical tip is get involved in your family's financial planning, right? And I'm sure, your parents are taking care of it today. I don't know how many of you even know the details. So I think it's important for you to get involved. And by that, I mean, be aware, sit down, have a chat, question, think about, reflect on what we just covered, reflect on your interests, and see whether the financial planning that your parents are taking care of for the moment is something that you fully subscribe to. You have a different view, right? It's great to have a different view, right? And sometimes it's great to challenge some of the views, right? So for example, some families may be putting everything in let's say, a bank fixed deposit. And you could turn around and say, but dad, sorry, I don't agree, because, it's probably not even covering inflation, right? So the more money you're putting in, it's not helping us get to a better life, because inflation is eating into a lot of the returns that you're generating, right? It's great to have that conversation, right? So get involved, right? Second practical tip is manage your own bank account, right? I'm sure you all have bank accounts, right? You all have, payment apps for sure, right? But a payment app is not a bank account. It's important to manage your own bank account, have a bank account, right? And if possible, and this is a if, I know you're not earning, I know, you probably don't have your own sort of saving or some capital, right? But if possible, and this is a big if, research and make some small investments, right? And it could be 500 rupees, it could be 1,000 rupees, right? There are opportunities where you can even put that small amounts of money today, right? But it'll be important for you to research and make some small investments in your own name. And the reason it's important is for you to just get a little bit of insights, advice, and practical knowledge of what investments are all about, right? What some of these asset classes are all about, right? And if you don't have that capital, I have another practical tip for you, right? What is that? Imagine you have 100,000 rupees with you, right? Or imagine you have 50,000 rupees with you to start with, right? Imagine I have given you that 50,000 rupees today. Imagine it's a loan, right, from me for the next 3 years. And I'm going to charge you, let's say, 10% interest on it, right? So you have to return 10% interest to me every year on the 50,000 that I'm going to give each one of you, right? Notional capital, I'm giving to all of HR college students today, right? It's a book entry, credit, show it as a loan, show that you are a debtor to me for 50,000, and start creating a portfolio. Start creating a portfolio on this assumed capital, right? Let us look at that portfolio of yours, research, invest, right? And if you do this sincerely, we can actually assess at the end of year 1, year 2, year 3, whether you're generating enough money to not just pay interest, but are actually generating a return, right? It'll be interesting to see, this could be almost like a game. And I probably will talk to the faculty separately on whether we can actually operationalize something like this, right? Which is you can have a dummy sort of fund created, and people notionally sort of buy and sell, and you don't need to do this full time, right? You can research once a week, once a month. You don't need to buy and sell every day. You can do it the weekend, notionally buy or sell, and see whether your portfolio is actually making money. And the reason I say it's notional is because if you make a loss, it's fine, but you'll walk away with a huge learning, right? So that's the beauty of having a notional sort of book created. So hopefully that gives you a sense of the how. How do I go about it? It gives you a practical tip on how I do it, either with real money or with notional money over the next 2 to 3 years. So you put some of your learnings to practice. You actually learn by experience. You learn by failing, right? So you take away the fear of failure. And that to me is a great stepping stone, right? So, I'm conscious of time. I'm going to now end with a very quick summary of all that we spoke, right? So the first thing that we spoke about is obviously having a sense of gratitude for being a part of a great academic institution like HR College, to thank the faculty, to thank your family for putting you in this position. Think about the vast transformation that's happening around the world. There is an energy transformation happening. There is a transformation in terms of technology that is happening, and there's a transformation in terms of biotechnology that is happening. All of this is completely changing the way things will happen in the future, right? So that's the base background. We talked about what are financial services, the 4 dimensions, the products, the institutions, the exchanges, and the regulators. We then went on to the how, right? How does one go about it? Clearly, there are ways to do it. you have to start today, not wait for, having a degree. Start small. There are certain practical tips we shared around how you can actually build your skill, right, in your chosen area. And I think what I will do is I would finally end with some of the skills that you need to be aware of. Skills that are, I wouldn't say a must, but skills which will help you become a really good professional in the financial services space. So firstly, accounting skills, I think that's a given. I think you all have joined, the commerce stream, and clearly with BBI, BMS, all of these courses that you guys are undertaking, accounting is going to be front and center of it. So, accounting is something that will come in handy. Analytical skills, it's not just accounting, but it's ability to analyze, to be good with numbers, to look at data, to look at ratios, right? So having analytical skills is important for financial services. Communication goes without saying. I think you just don't only need book knowledge, you don't only need analytical skills, but you need to be able to communicate that. Then comes decision making, ability to make decisions, ability to make balanced decisions. I think it's very important. An element of forward looking. You need to be having a lot of data. And that's, again, a unique thing about financial services, right? You have a lot of data, but a lot of this data is the past data, right? It's basis what has actually happened already in the markets, in the economy, in the monetary policy, all of that, right? But markets are always forward-looking, right? Financial services generally forward-looking, right? When a bank lends, it is taking decisions on the back of financial statements that exist, which are backdated, right? As at March, as at December, right, of last year. But the repayment capacity of the borrower is based on the future cash flow and the earning potential, right? So your ability to be able to use data which is past to be forward-looking and create a view of what that forward should be or will look like is important. It's a skill, right? So it's important to have that, and it can only happen if you practice it, right? And then obviously there are elements of financial reporting. There's element of risk management, that comes with it. So look, I think probably we've covered 50 minutes. I think, since I started speaking. So that leaves us with probably 10 to 15 minutes of questions. Hopefully, everyone has that time. I don't know, if that's the time that we'd scheduled, Tasneem, but I will now open it up for questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for that very informative lecture. So we have a few questions here already. So this question is from Aman Roy. So why is it that nowadays people are hesitating to FD? Like most of the investors say that rather than investing in FD, you can invest in mutual funds or SIPs or equity.
Okay, excellent. So I love the fact that, all of you are thinking about investing right away. Even before you're thinking about earning and making a career, right? So which is great. And it's important that one takes informed decisions. And look, one of the biggest reasons why I personally don't like FDs is that it is not meeting inflation, or it is not helping you beat inflation. Let me rephrase it, right? It can probably meet the inflation, but it will not beat the inflation, right? And why is it important? It's important for you and your savings to be beating inflation, because remember, you all have studied this, I'm sure, in your first couple of years of high school, is, an average inflation. It's a given. Pick a number. It could be 5%. If you're in the US or UK, generally it's low. It's high in the last couple of years, but it's generally pretty low. India has always been in the 6-7% range, and FDs generally give you the same. They give you 6 or 7%. And at the end of the day, you may think you're earning interest, but when you take that same money to go and buy something, you will realize that you're actually paying whatever you earned as an interest. So you're back to square one, right? You haven't improved your quality of life. You're just where you were, right? So imagine if you keep doing this over 20 years, what will happen, right? You think you have, let's pick a number. Let's say you save 50 lakhs, right? You may think I have 50, and let's say add another 25 lakhs as interest, right? On your savings. You think over 25 years, you've saved 50 lakhs, you've got another 20 lakhs as interest. So you are very happy, you got 70. But when you actually go to buy things, right, you're actually paying a lot more than the 50 lakhs that you would have paid 20 years back for the same thing, right? So I think what you need to be most conscious of is that whatever you do for your savings, it should be able to beat inflation so that it gives you a better quality of life, gives you a better bang for the buck, as they say. And if it is not doing that, I think you need to reassess, right? And look, investments by itself is probably another few hours of conversation, right? It's not even one topic, it's probably many topics in itself. I would love to talk about that separately, time permitting, but yeah, on the basic thing is that you need to have some FDs. I'm not saying you should not have anything, but you should always have a distribution. That's why, maintaining an asset allocation. You may have heard of asset allocation. I think is key. Make sure you spread out your investments into different assets, which we covered briefly, so that, it gives you the maximum balanced return.
Yes, sir. So the next question is from Priyansi Chimnani. She says, sir, why do you think, in spite of students having all the qualifications and knowledge, they aren't able to get a job in the field of their choice, like IB, financial modeling, and usually end up settling with a more basic profile? What kind of value additions would you suggest in order to get a preferred field?
Yeah. This is a tough one. And look, partly it is tough because of what I actually call as match, right? So what I mean by that, look, when I started as well, I had high aspirations to probably get into trading, right? Or I had high aspirations to get into what most people like to believe and what is preferred is investment banking, right? Now, it is not that simple in the sense that some of these fields that you are aspiring for need a high level of skills in a particular area, and there are limited availability, and wherever there is an availability, generally entry-level people, so you have to start somewhere, right? So entry-level people will not find an opening, right? So nobody generally, or no institution generally, will hire a very fresh person into their investment banking team, or will hire a very fresh individual into their trading team, right? And one of the ways to go around this is let your aspiration remain, but pick an institution which has a variety of these activities. Try and get into that institution first. So it's important. So look, when I started, I was fortunate. At that time, foreign banks, there were only 4 foreign banks in India, with very limited branches, right? And I was very, very fortunate to get into HSBC, which was one of the top 2 foreign banks in India at that point, and it still is probably. And I was fortunate because while I didn't get into my chosen job on day 1 or in year 1 or in year 2, I knew that I could work my way once I'm inside, right? So what I would leave you with is, yes, have that goal, have that aspiration, but try and pick an institution which will offer you that over a period of time. It's not going to offer you on day 1, right? So look, I know for a fact that a lot of these, institutions, and I'm talking of institutions I worked in, like a JP Morgan or a Goldman Sachs, will not hire, fresh graduates and put them on the trading floor, right? So what they generally do is they pick, bright sort of individuals from the Ivy League, from MIT, from IITs in India, top rankers. But even they need to start at what I call the analyst level, which is a very entry level basic tasks, sitting outside of the trading floor, and slowly they find their way inside, right? So everyone has to start somewhere. So just be very aware that there is nothing negative about doing that, right? We all have to do that, and just be open to doing that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We have one more question here from Vanshika. Sir, do government banks have better opportunities and returns of private banks?
When you say government banks, I am assuming you're referring to the nationalized banks as we know them in India. And I'm assuming again that when you say returns, you're referring to the rate of interest. Is that what I should understand that? I think that's what the question is all about.
Yes.
So yeah. So look, I think interest rates and what banks offer today are actually free in the sense that nobody controls them. The Reserve Bank, at some point used to control it. I do know that, and I'm sure you guys will know that many years back, savings account interest rates were governed by Reserve Bank, right? The savings accounts would only get you, if I recollect, 3%, right? They were strictly governed by Reserve Bank. Nobody could offer more, nobody could offer less, but has since been freed, which means that, there are banks which even offer 5 and 7% on even savings accounts today, right? And so similarly, even for fixed deposits or any sort of deposits, recurring deposits or whatever types of deposits you may have, you will find that, banks have different rates of interest, right? If you walk from A to B to C, there could be 3 banks on the same street, you will find that the rates vary, but that is marginal, right? It will not be massively different. Also remember, there is something called cooperative banks, right? Cooperative banks, by their very nature, it's a cooperative society, right, which governs the bank. So, the cooperative banks generally offer a little higher rate of interest compared to the government banks, basis your question. But then there is a little bit of a question on some of the cooperative banks in terms of their stability, right? So one needs to be a little careful, where you're putting your hard-earned money, because, you don't want to be to get it back, right? And things have happened, right, in history, and it continues to happen around the world all the time. So one needs to be very careful, balance the return with the stability aspect. The nationalized banks are safer, but, I think so are some of the larger private banks in India. Returns don't really materially differ, right? It could be at best 0.5% here or there. So take a balanced view before you make a decision around where you put your money.
Yes, sir. So now we move on to the last question, which is from Mayur Cheta. So, sir, he is asking, what are your thoughts on CFA and FRM? What are its future scope? And would artificial intelligence affect them? Because companies like Morgan Stanley are testing OpenAI chatbots, which plays a major role of financial advisor and financial analyst. So, can you share your thoughts on these?
Sure. So look, I think, we spoke about, the skills very briefly towards the end of my conversation today, right? So if you look at some of the skills that I mentioned that will be essential for financial services and having a career, we spoke about having an analytical skill, right? Basis which you can analyze financial statements, you can analyze data. And I think a CFA or FRM actually helps you do that, right? So my simple view is that any additional qualification is always welcome, right? So one should not think too much unless you're putting too much of effort, it's not an area of your interest, then absolutely have a rethink. Or you're going to put too much of an effort and money and time, then seriously think about it. But let's say, you're going to get a qualification, let's say with 1 year of part-time studies, right? And you have the time, right? And it doesn't cost you a whole lot of money. Please go ahead, right? Because any qualification, additional qualification, be it a CFA, which is hopefully not full-time, or FRM, which is going to impart that skill, be it risk management, be it analytics, be it financial analysis. These skills are going to be of help to you. If it's an area of interest, if that's where you want your career to be, then absolutely do some additional research with people who've actually done that and who are working in institutions and how it's helping them. But by all means, don't hesitate and don't think too much, because, if you're not going to spend a lot of time, please go ahead. Coming to AI, look, I think everyone has a view on what artificial intelligence is, and most, I would say 99% of the people actually don't know enough about it, right? The reason I say that is because it is still evolving, right? We don't know what all it can help with. Today, artificial intelligence is nothing but a computer which is trained basis a lot of scenarios which have already happened, right? So to take a simple example, a chat bot, right? We all know of chatbots, right? So when you log into a website, a chatbot pops up, right? Sir, how can I help you, right? That's a chatbot. Now, what a chatbot does is actually a form of artificial intelligence. It's a computer which is trained to answer basic questions, right? So these are questions which will come almost intuitively every time, right? What is my balance, right? So let's say there's a chatbot in a bank. The question would be, what is my balance? What is the rate of interest for a 1-year deposit? Which is your nearest ATM, right? These are very standard questions that people ask, and a chatbot is trained at the back end to answer those questions, right? So to answer your question, look, I think artificial intelligence is only going to grow, is only going to get perfected over many years. And the tasks that it performs today are more simplistic. It is based on the models that exist at the back end, basis which the computer is thinking like a human. And it will only get better as it goes along, right? So to answer your specific question, look, today, you would have heard and you would know that there is something called high frequency trading in equities for sure, right? And I've seen it. High frequency trading is where computers buy and sell a stock. Humans don't. Computers will place an order, it will buy, it will sell, it will buy, it will sell, and it does that in nanoseconds, right? In exchanges around the world, right? So computers are already doing tasks like trading, which is supposedly high-end work, right? And they actually beat a human most times, right? Because it has all this information and it's able to process all this information, which a human can't in that short span of time. So to answer your question, look, AI will definitely be an enabler. A lot of banks today have high-frequency trading, which is done by computers. There is no human intervention. AI will assist, will help further some of these activities. And like I said, there'll always be humans that will be needed for more high-end tasks, right? So when some of these tasks go away, there'll be other high-end tasks which get created. And therefore, I think the demand for humans will always remain, is just my simple view, because for roughly 40 years, you know, in a reasonable scale, and them, you know, most institutions and banks. ATMs first came, people thought end of banks, right? Now there are more ATMs and there are branches, but branches are still being opened. Right? So, you know, it's the end of the world.
Yes, sir. This brings us to the end of today's session. Mr. Tushar's insight on not just financial service, but his advice on energy, technology, biotechnology, as well as motivating factors were quite intriguing. The depth of knowledge and expertise in the financial markets that you have shared with us today has been truly informative and thought-provoking. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Hopefully
so
this
much.
will help you, and look forward to seeing you in person sometime.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for being here. It was
Thank
really
you.
a great session and some great points you touched upon. Thank you.
Thank you, Naseem.
So guys, as we step on this riveting journey together, I urge you all to seize every opportunity, to learn every chance you get, and to make the most of this time in your lives. We are thrilled to have you here and are sure that you will make your loved ones proud.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope that you continue to contribute to this community's legacy and become virtuous leaders of an upstanding tomorrow. Once again, thank you so much, Mr. Desai, for your time. And thank you, everyone, for joining in. We hope to see you here back again for another edifying session.
Thank you, Ansha and Neha. You guys were fantastic.
Welcome, 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 sir.
You were better than me.
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.